Welcome back to ShiftCast. This is episode 13. Michael is unfortunately unavailable today, so we've got special guest host Belleair is with us today. Belleair, welcome
Oh,
to the show. Let the people know what you got going on and who you are.
What are you talking about? I'm Michael. I just got a haircut. I'm a little sick. There's nothing different about anything we're doing. I don't have glasses. That's probably the
Oh yeah, you
giveaway.
need
I
to.
don't have some cool shades.
Yep.
But yeah, guys, thanks so much for having me on. Belleair, content creator, putting out some YouTube content. I'm usually doing some player analysis. Just put out a video on beast mode that I'm pretty proud of. Also, the Need Boost podcast. Typically have some guests on. Hootie, you've been on before. Just had Corelli on recently. And then also helping out with the Wave Dash podcast um, with some of the guys. So, guys, thanks for having me on. Excited to talk Rocket League.
Of course, man. I'll chime in as well and say if you like this kind of stuff, like if you're watching this channel and this kind of video, definitely give Belleair a follow on Twitter and YouTube, etc. I think you'll enjoy his content as well. It's a little bit deeper of a dive into specific players, teams, play styles, etc. So check that out as well. Belleair, thank you for joining us. Jens, what's going on? How are you this
hello.
weekend?
I'm doing great, and this isn't live, so um, we record this beforehand, and this is the first time there's actually still daylight in Europe
Yeah,
when we're
that's right.
recording. So I'm actually not up until 2 a.m. So I'm doing absolutely great. And yeah, I mean, I just have to say as well, congrats on all the content and all the podcast stuff, Belair, because it's actually refreshing to see people from America kind of know what they're talking about. Because I was checking out which podcasts were available like a year or two ago, and there were some other podcasts from NA. I'm not going to name any names, but I mean, the people in my ranked lobby would have a better understanding of RLCS. So,
Ooh,
I mean,
You know,
that's
yeah,
brutal.
I was just
different
tuning into
audience, I
Hootie
guess.
streams. I was tuning into Hootie streams all the time, and I was like, somebody needs to step up and know what they're talking about over
Oh
here in North
no.
America.
Oh no,
Hold
the
on.
shade.
We've been here 5 minutes and we already got shade being thrown. What is this?
No, but it's really nice to listen to people who actually follow the scene at
Yeah,
a level where you're like, okay, they know what they're talking
yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. There's so much RLCS, and you can never know everything. So
That's
it's
right.
it's a never-ending rabbit hole that I continue to fall down. But RLCS, we got some spicy times as we're
Oh
just
yeah.
starting to get into the second split here, and I think we might have a little news to get to, some
That's right.
breaking stuff right before.
Yeah, absolutely. We had the NA Open Quals this weekend, and these names, everything is a qualifier. It just drives me insane. I'm so frustrated. I wish they would. I don't understand why they couldn't just keep the name regional for main events. It's so confusing. People come to my stream and they're like, "When does RLCS start?" I'm like, "Well, Open Quals are this weekend." They're like, "Well, I don't see it on the Rocket League channel." I'm like, "Well, that's because it's Open Qual, not Wall 4." It's just
about.
so
And also, it's number 4,
yeah.
even though
Uh,
we're into split 2. So
but
it
yeah.
would, I think, have been a little bit more logical to call it split 2 open qualifier number 1,
Mm,
but it
I
is
was
what it
just
is.
that's right. It is what it is. I mean, what
I
can you
was
do?
doing a uh, I was doing a video. Sorry, I was comparing like fall to last fall, and somebody was like, technically, it's not the fall split. I was like, look, right, I'm trying my best.
The
I
first
was doing
split
my
of the
best.
RLCS season, whatever it's called.
Yeah. I mean, it's
But
more that it last split was winter split and this spring is
yeah,
spring split,
yeah.
something like that. I mean, yeah, it's
The
different.
naming, the naming is. I see what they're going at. They want to create some uniformity. Start the season at the beginning of the year, have it conclude at the same time every time, and that's fine. I like the uniformity. Call it the same name every time, rather than like Slurpee Cup, Bubble
Yeah,
One Cup, whatever.
yeah,
But there's nothing wrong with the word regional. We should have just kept
yes.
that, and then we would have been fine. Anyways,
Also, this at least the socials for Rocket League Esports still
yeah,
or start using the name London Major now instead of
yeah, I saw that.
Split 2 Major or whatever it's officially called in the rulebook.
Yeah,
So it makes it even more confusing why it's called Open Qualifier 4, but at least it's a more, you know, it's a name that people actually can relate with than instead of just Major 2.
yeah. RLCS, do some work on your naming. It's terrible at the moment, causing confusion. Let's get into it though. Open qualifier number 4 this past weekend. North America and South America and MENA and SSA. I think that's one change that we got to applaud Blast and Epic and
Oh, for
Psionics
sure.
for changing from last split to this one. Obviously, last split, every single region outside of Europe played on one weekend. Now we've reverted back to what we already had, which worked fine. And I don't know why we changed it, but here we are yet again. Um, they have balanced it out a little bit. 4 regions one weekend, 3 regions the next weekend. Much better, a lot easier to consume and keep up with from a fan point of view. But we got
I
some big
mean, it
news.
could still be better because now you have Oceania and Asia Pacific, which are kind
Yeah,
of the same weird time zone for Europe and for North America
right.
and South America, and we have those on the same weekend. So you could
Yeah,
split that up, but it's fine. It's better than what it used to be. It's an
that's right.
improvement at least.
We're making some improvements. But we had some crazy, I guess, crazy outcomes here in the first qualifier of split number two. We saw it happen a few times in the last split. Moist missing, Resolve missing an event, Rebellion missing an event, and NA. So this is not the first time this has happened, but we got a big one here. Dignitas, after bringing Stizzy over from Europe, they were fifth in points, by the way, tied for fifth in points as we rolled into this second split. Now they have missed the qualifier. They dropped a series a little bit sooner than they would have liked to a team called Triple Threat, which is Ticarel, Tivaristo, and Talk. And that's a solid team as well, but Dig should be beating them. They should be moving
Yeah,
into that upper round two. And if they had done that, then they probably still would have made main event through lowers. But since they didn't, they ran into NRG in that qualification match, and NRG actually reverse swept them. So Dig missing out in a very catastrophic way. If I'm not mistaken, they were reverse swept by Triple Threat as well. So two best of 5 reverse sweeps on the same day to miss qual number one here for split two. I mean,
tragic.
tragic. Yeah, tragic. Absolutely. And the way that this season is structured and the points and everything, it's extremely unlikely for them to make the major, which obviously means that they're almost certainly not going to make worlds. And so, we're seeing a lot of discussion on Twitter where like the season is effectively shot for Dig.
I mean,
Tough way to
yeah,
go, huh?
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we've seen before that if a team drops down to a team that they shouldn't be losing against, like Triple Threat, then they can meet
That's right.
another team that should be making it in. And it happened again now against NRG. And yeah, I mean, they got sat on by NRG, you know,
Set on.
by America's ass. That is Garrett Gordon.
That's funny. Yeah, Captain America stepped up big there. I was excited to see Aqua and the NRG team put together something. Obviously it's one thing in the qualifier where the level of competition across the board is just a hair lower. So I'm excited to see what they can put together in the main event, especially throughout the Swiss stage, where obviously we'll get to see them sized up against a few different opponents. Um, but for Dig, I mean, obviously there was some stuff published earlier today that it sounds as though Dig may be looking to bring Gyro in place of Evo. I mean, it seems as though they're scrambling. What do you make of the situation for Dig? And I see the question here: does this potentially deter other new orgs looking at RLCS from entering?
I don't.
Um, Go ahead, Belair.
You want to take yes? Well, I was prepping for this, doing some notes, and then right before we start recording, it's like, all right, well, I'll throw away all of my notes because they've completely changed. It seemed like it was like, all right, well, there was always a chance that NA is so deep and there's so many teams vying for those 4 spots. There was always a reality where Dig might not make it, get to the major, but you still wanted to test the talent, kind of see what you got. Maybe it's a good start and you can kind of leapfrog into next season, or maybe you're just kind of looking at what you have as you head into the off season with some new talent. But they've completely thrown that out and jumped the gun, and now it seems like Evo might be moved to the bench. And I guess they're rebuilding around Stizzy. You got some veterans around him to see how they can kind of get things shook out. But to your second point, Hootie, I don't think that other teams should be deterred from grabbing talent, especially if you're North America and the talent is coming over from Europe. Really, you can always find upgrades there, at least the way I see it. But
Hold on, though. You started talking about death in NA. You cannot talk about death in NA when Rizzo has now an RLCS point.
He's tremendous. I don't know what you're talking
I
about. I
mean,
don't think
that
he
is
should
the
have ever
four-time.
retired.
That's a four. The depth is so strong that the four-time world champion has been pushed down to only one RLCS
Only
point
one.
for a
Yeah,
season.
yeah, yeah. No, yeah. Okay, but seriously though, of course it's a tragic situation
Yeah,
to not make the Swiss stage of the first regional when you bring in someone from across the pond. Um, it doesn't really say anything about organizations bringing over talent from a different region because not every player is going to be the same. I mean,
right.
Stizzy is a decent player or has shown that he can make the playoffs 3 times, right? But that doesn't mean that he's going to be the best player in Europe. And they took a chance on him, but it wasn't guaranteed that you're going to have great results all of a sudden. And well, that's what you see. But it, it I think it left a lot of people within the organization, or at least players, quite frustrated with the whole situation, with the roster change and then this result. And then, I mean, you can't just immediately do something about Stizzy, and he wasn't playing the worst. So then you want to make a change, right? And any change, really. So it
Are
was gonna be either Evo down, I mean, or Arsenal, I guess, but yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense to me. It's quite unexpected to happen so quickly, maybe, but it does make sense if you look at the roster, I think.
Yeah, what do you make of the speed of the move, Jens? Because if you would have told me last night, "Hey, Dig didn't make it, they're gonna make a change," I probably would have just said, "Well, I guess they're gonna shift off of Arsenal just because they want to see if Evo and Stizzy are a cohesive duo," but clearly that's not the way they went. So what do you make of the speed of the move? Is it just a symptom of the new formatting of the season, or how do you kind of take how they went about it?
Mm, well, I think the shift report went out really early. I don't think, you know, everything can always change. We're at the moment of recording, we don't know yet exactly what's going to happen because nothing hasn't been officially announced from the team side. Um, but what you quite often see behind the scenes is that the players are already talking about roster changes while they're still in a tournament, basically, right? Or
Mm.
very quickly afterwards, right? For example, with the roster move within Rule One, right?
Yeah.
With Ama dropping out, was it? Yeah.
Mhm.
Then it was already kind of in the works, or at least something was brewing while the players were still in Copenhagen. So that shows you how quickly things can start moving, or at least start kind of getting loose, and then all the parts start moving a little bit, and then something like this can happen. So I don't think it's that weird that it happens that quickly after a result that nobody was waiting for, was looking for. So it's I don't think the speed is that weird if you just look at the players on the roster. Like I said, I think Evo on the bench kind of makes sense, but it is also kind of weird because they just rebuilt around Evo last split, right? Or before the season started. So yeah, they're in a weird place right now, and with a couple of better results, I'm sure they'll be fine. But it just makes a huge difference if you actually can score points uh within the first open qualifier of the split. So yeah, we'll see where they go from here, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's that weird that it's an early change.
Yeah, maybe not weird, but I do definitely think it's almost like unintentionally encouraged by the structure and system that we have
Yeah,
at play right now. I mean, we see
yeah,
it from other teams as well. NRG at the beginning of the season, even absolutely scrambling. You know, two, three, four different roster iterations in a very short amount of time, and I think it's just the uncertainty with the lack of top 8, right? Like, you don't have a little extra
yeah,
security blanket to try things out. Like, if Dig was, because they probably, well, I mean, they would have already been in the main event. So even if they flubbed out and went 0-3 in the main event, they would have accumulated some points, and they probably would have given it maybe one more event to see if things work, and maybe they don't. But my point is, what we
Yeah,
currently have is very cutthroat. It's very volatile,
absolutely.
and in a way, like I said earlier, I think it's unintentionally. So it's not maybe the idea behind it, but it's unintentionally kind of incentivizing these things. I mean, you look again, and this is not as high of a level, but young whippersnappers, they failed to make this main event. They've already made two in the first split, and one of their players, Skippy, leaves. And I had a big discussion about this on my stream.
Actually, I don't think that's true anymore. He deleted his looking for a team tweet.
Well, let's just say for what I'm saying, he does. In either way, even if it doesn't happen, he still thought it, and the reason that he thought it is because of what we're sitting in. Like for that team, they're not making major, right? So
True.
what do their points do for them? It does nothing. It gives them a little bit extra seeding, and the way that they've made some adjustments to seeding is now the teams. It's kind of tied to an individual player. So like Skippy would be able to take his good seeding with him wherever he landed. And so if you're not fighting for a major spot, if you're not fighting for a world spot, why not try something new? If you feel like you and your team have kind of capped out and you don't think you can elevate any further, why not try something new? And like I said, they're not as high level. So Dig is, they do have more points, but with that miss, they're getting 1 point for this first event. And so Direct actually responded to a tweet because someone posted, I don't think Dig is totally doomed. And they went on to explain why. And then Direct came in and was like, well, actually, mathematically, they're pretty screwed. Like they're gonna have to go two top twos, and even then, it's still not totally in their control. And so is it like it's possible that they can regain their control of their own destiny, but it's extremely unlikely. So, this format definitely, and I'm not saying it's bad. This is just a side effect of it where it's going to cause more volatility, especially in split two.
Yeah.
Um, so um, with that, we've got another team that had a little bit of a stumble in the first split, especially after the offseason and a lot of discussion around this team, and then they pick up Justin, added as a piece alongside Parthan two piece. And they obviously looked rough in that second event where they just missed out. I think they lost to TSM to qualify. And then in the third event, they did qualify. And if I'm not mistaken, they went 0-3, even losing to Muffin Men, which was, a team that was really just, I mean, they're obviously competitive, but all the players on that team knew that it wasn't going to last. They were just playing for one split and Squishy was done. And so that's a rough loss, especially for a team that is, doesn't have that mindset. They had the mindset of like, let's make majors, let's compete, try to be,
Yeah.
international
Shopify
contender.
Rebellion.
And so
Yeah.
a rough first split for Rebellion, but they seemed, at least in the qualifier, so, take it with a grain of salt, but they seem to look a lot more comfortable. A reverse sweep there against M80, which I think is a strong win and should indicate confidence for that team moving into the main event.
It'll be interesting to see what they kind of make of this split because there were the, rumors or the whispers that, they might be looking to make a change
Mhm.
during the trade window. They end up running it back. I think that it's going to be. I'm watching Two Piece really carefully because it seemed like all of last season he was kind of propped up as this kind of who could be the next upcoming star from the region, and we haven't really seen it yet. They really split the ball very evenly. Like if you look at their first split, not the fall, Major One split, Shopify Rebellion, all three of their players were either 60% goal participation and Justin was 59%. So I think it's important for somebody to kind of step up to the plate, whether that be Two Piece becoming more of a creator and playmaker or Parth becoming more of a scorer. I'm interested to see what the injection is going to be to kind of take them to that next level because I don't really know if we've seen a lot of cases where situations where you just have everybody kind of contributing very evenly where that works out in a positive way. But who do you look at as kind of the piece that could make or break Shopify making the next event?
I feel like for me, it's always Parth. I think when you see Parth have like if we're putting performances in like a tier list, right? When Parth has like an A tier performance, an S tier performance from himself, that's when I think Rebellion is their best. Obviously, not every player has good days, bad days, mediocre days, etc. But I think
Mhm.
the floor for Justin and Two Piece is high enough where they will, at least in North America, consistently be competitive. And Parth, I think his floor can be a little bit lower. There are some off days that I think just hurt that team. And so even if you have Justin and Two Piece operating at their floor and not in their A tier, S tier performance, I think as long as Parth is in that A and S tier, um, I think they are okay. And then if you have all three of them performing at that A and S tier level, I think they're a top four team in the region with potential to kind of go toe to toe and maybe not win, but go toe to toe with the two big dogs in North America. So I think there's a lot of talent on that team, and I think the biggest thing is just kind of the consistency issue, really more than anything with that squad. We've also got some exciting news in North America. Two big organizations moving into the scene. One is just kind of a transfer. We'll talk about them here in a little bit, but Moist picked up Pirates on a Boat. That's a big one. And then we also had the ever teased Cloud9 back in the scene. They have been baiting for years at this point, and they pick up the Omelet Squad, Daniil, Percy, and Lion Blaze. What do you guys make of Cloud9 grabbing that squad specifically and at this moment in
Yeah,
time? We're halfway
I
through
mean,
a season. That team did just come off of a big top four performance where they kind of threatened G2, and I think that's something to give that team confidence, give that org confidence in that team. So Jens, I mean, what do you make of this Cloud9 pickup here at this moment in the season and with this roster?
I mean, it's not the best team
Sure.
ever for an organization the size and the scope of Cloud9. I think that's clear, but at least, it's an unsigned team in
Yeah,
North America. There's not that
that's
many,
right.
and they clearly wanted to be in North America, so then that's absolutely fine. Um, and I think it was actually the highest ranked North American team that wasn't
Yeah,
signed yet
available. Right.
after that. Yeah, that was available after Moist picked up Pirates on the Boat, right? So, I mean, that's pretty decent. Um, but I think you might have to look at the bigger picture to truly understand this move.
Hmm.
And that is what's coming up in August, probably. There's no dates announced as far as I know, which I'm referring to the Esports World Cup, which is literally just a rebranded version of the Gamers 8 tournament. As far as we're aware, it's going to be the same kind of ones, twos, and threes, uh, club battles or whatever it's called, team battles
Yeah.
Crew
formats,
battles.
crew battles. Yeah, that one, where you have uh, a huge prize pool. Well, uh, for
Sure.
Rocket League,
Yeah.
I
Pull it back a
guess.
bit.
Um, but a prize pool and also an incentive for organizations to join as many of the different games as there are in Riyadh with your organization. Right? So I think the organizations get like a $600,000 stipend just for participating in all the esports, right?
Wow.
So it makes sense that
Sure.
Cloud9, who is one of the participants in the event, wants to have a Rocket League team. And as far as we have learned from some other leagues, there aren't any, Shift isn't involved, but there were some Twitter screenshots going around where there were no qualifiers for the Rocket League tournament involved. So that means it's going to be just invited teams, which means that a team, even though they're not the best team in the world, like Cloud9 currently in Rocket League, can join the tournament there. So for Cloud9, it makes financially a lot of sense, and it's fun for North America and for Rocket League to have Cloud9 finally back after all the years of teasing, and after all the history they have made in the esports. So yeah, I mean, good, decent pickup.
Yeah.
Not a lot to say about it, but decent
Sure.
pickup. Yeah.
Well, let me throw this over to Belleair then. Well, let's talk about Moist and Pirates on a Boat. I think one wrinkle that is a little bit different there is Moist still had Coach Noah, and Pirates on a Boat had Coach Achieves. And obviously, unfortunately, one of them would have to be left out of the equation. And so the way that Moist went about it is to hold on to who they had and honor their agreement with Noah. And obviously, I'm sure there are some other things that we'll maybe not hear about behind the scenes as far as their decision to do that. But what do you make of the Moist pickup and the move to NA?
Yeah, I mean, great pickup if you're Moist. Coming over makes sense because their organization is located
Right.
here. And also, if you're going to hop in at a time where you want to get a team who has some talent and you kind of have some maneuverability going into the off season and even something to look forward to this season, really solid squad. 5UP, I think, is one of the better young players that we have who's coming up within North America. and then have a little flexibility with what you want to do. It does stink to see that Achieves is the one who
Yeah,
is on the chopping block there. But it had to be somebody. I guess it makes sense for cohesion or team culture or what have you to keep Noah. Maybe it's a more boring answer like a contract situation, which it
sure.
probably is, where you just move him over. But really exciting to see even just the visual graphic that I saw on Twitter of the top 12 teams in North America all
Yeah,
having orgs. Like, all right, cool. It's glad that we're getting news like this where everybody is coming in after a pretty tumultuous off season where things were a little rickety. So people still having buy-in is exciting to see, at least from my perspective.
It did hurt a little bit though to see EU get memed on because they have, what is it, 8 out of the top 16 teams signed, compared to North America, which is doing quite well at the moment. It hurts a little bit,
yeah,
but hopefully we'll get there.
yeah. I am curious as to what that is because at the moment Europe's actually got like far superior viewership, and all I can really arrive at is that there's just more orgs that are established that are just housed in NA. I feel like it might be just be something as simple as that, where like there's a small incentive for them to pick up an NA team because that's just where they are.
Yeah, I think there's a limited number of orcs. There's only so many orcs to go around.
Sure,
Um, and there's only so much money to go around, and the
sure.
money pool in terms of sponsorships and things that orgs like to run their business is just bigger in North America than in Europe.
Yeah.
It
Okay.
just is. So if you are an organization, even if you're not based in North America, you'd rather pick up a North American team if you can afford it,
Yeah.
because the uh, salaries are a little bit higher too, but they're not that low in Europe. So if you can afford it, pick up a North American team because it makes more money for the
Yeah.
organization. And
Okay.
then there's, I guess, I don't know how much of a factor it is, but there's the other thing of not just there's only so many orgs to go around, but also there's only so many fans to go around, and
Sure.
organizations like to have a fan base, and there are some huge fan bases in Europe,
Mm,
which
yeah.
are already taken up by the organizations in the scene, right? So
Mm,
if you're joining uh, an organization as an organization in Europe, are you going to have much to go on other than a good team?
yeah.
Not sure.
Yeah. And it also seems like there's a few things that you just rattled off, but it also seems like the Europe is like very, very, very top heavy. There's those four that I think were last split very clear. Maybe there are two new teams that compete with them. Um, but outside of those six, I think it's extremely unlikely that any of those other teams get international representation. So everything that you rattled off, I think makes sense. Well, let's jump into we got a Swiss spotlight. We're going to take a look at some young stars facing off in round one. TSM, who has had a um, continual improvement throughout the season, each of their result getting. Um, Actually, I don't know if chronologically it all got better, but they have certainly improved throughout their time with a recent top four. Um, and Snowman, who has been a little bit up and down, but has tons of talent on that roster. And I think with more experience, as they continue to gain experience through RLCS, that roster will continue to raise their ceiling and probably their floor as well. So let's just talk a little bit about that matchup. Belleair, what are the things that stand out to you between those two teams?
I think it's the duel between the two kind of big creators. Cream's had a great finish to the Major One qualifiers, and then on the other side we have Frosty, who is just lighting up the stat sheet. I think TSM have been a team who, over the course of this season, they've kind of been gatekeeping is such a term we use for so many things, but they've consistently beat teams that they should be beating on paper,
Right.
and then can't overcome the teams that are higher than them in the rankings. And I think that this is another version of that where I would choose TSM. It's crazy that they're also a young team too. I look at
Yeah.
them and it's like, oh, Wavy is still very young. I almost forget that because he's been in so many events and I've seen him so much recently. But it's like, oh yeah, he's still like very young as well. But who do you have? Who are you looking at? Who's under the lens for you, Hootie?
Um, I think for me, it's less about an individual player on either side, and I think it's a lot about the just execution of the style, because TSM is a very patient team. They are willing to sit on defense and field some of that pressure, and they are extremely effective with their counterattack. Um, and I think up to a certain level of opponent, I think that is extremely, extremely effective. Um, we saw when they matched up in the top four with G2, it it's just you're going to end up breaking down, right? Like those caliber of players, if you give them the space, if you sit back and absorb that pressure for long enough, eventually they're going to crack through that defense. Um, or did they play Gen G? I can't remember. It was one of those top two, but the point remains for either of them that that level of talent will break down your defense if you can't be a little bit more aggressive and gain um, some progression down the field. I guess start to win some midfield challenges, press a little bit yourself. You can't just have a quick stint and then back on defense. But Snowman, I think they are still young. They're obviously very mechanically talented, but I think they are a little bit more, possibly a little bit more prone to the overextension, the over aggression. One too many passes or one too many challenges forward or something just where they misstep. Right? They miscommunicate. They go for an ambitious play, an ambitious shot, and they don't keep that back line solid. And I think TSM will take advantage of that. So I think it's going to be kind of a stylistic thing between these two squads. But I'm with you. I think TSM will probably end up taking the dub there.
Yeah, it's got to be TSM for me as well. I'm just looking at that upper bracket round matchup uh, with Snowman getting swept by OG and TSM sweeping Cloud9. I mean, you can say that OG is a little bit higher caliber of a
Yeah.
team, but it's still the recent form that they come into these games with. And if that's the showing they have, then I think they can do it again.
Well, there's our spotlight on the young guns there for round number one, and that's going to conclude the NA portion. So let's jump over to South America. There was actually a little event, and I unfortunately was not able to catch any of it. I had some stuff going on, but there's the Duds Challenge Season One off-season tournament down there in South America, and Complexity fall to Erased and Furia in that event after picking up Diaz, which I think a lot of people look at as a move to potentially raise that ceiling, maybe pop them into the top eight internationally. But a little bit of a slow start here. Jens, what do you make of that? Were you able to catch any of that
I
that gameplay?
unfortunately didn't get to watch
Yeah.
the games, but it's cool to see another tournament going on,
Yeah,
even though there's limited time in between
sure.
splits, especially with the organization, some of the organizations being at the major as well, and still everyone participating. It's not like Complexity and Furia weren't there.
Right.
I mean, Furia won the whole thing, so yeah, it's cool to see. I I didn't really catch the games, so
Yeah.
feels difficult to really say much about how they
Sure.
played. I just saw the tweets though. I
Oh
saw
yeah, I saw those
Jan
too.
get
So
really
spicy.
ooh. I mean, he is some. He can get some tweets out of his system that
Yeah.
there's some fire burning there, and it needs to be put online. It needs to be shown. So I feel like it was still all fun and games though.
Sure.
Sometimes it's like a reaction to what someone has said, like they feel like they're a little bit hard done by, and then
Hmm.
some of the tweets can be a little bit like, "Oh, should you really do that?" But now it was just it was pretty fun. I think Royales as well tweeted when he won against tennis. He was like, "Hey, he's my son. I no, I just babysit this kid."
He was probably
Which
typing
was
that tweet with one hand though,
he
because he got
was,
Mm.
yeah.
sustained
Yeah.
an injury.
Yeah, and he actually played through it, didn't he? He actually got injured during a football game before the event, before the qualifiers and everything, and played through it um, with with an injury. And then after that, he actually went to get it cast.
Wow.
So yeah, ooh, hopefully recovers well.
Well, obviously, like you said, it's hard to weigh in on the discussion about complexity and Diaz and whatnot, not having been able to catch it. But I will say this, I don't think it is too surprising, and I guess this kind of, for me, also applies even to the Dig situation. it's not too surprising to me that it may take a little bit of time to get things rolling and get that team chemistry rocking. And of course, we don't know, um, off the field personality things, so that could be at play here with Dig. I have no clue. There's nothing that makes me believe that. I'm just saying that that is a possibility. But with Diaz, I think he's extremely talented. I mean, we see it in the ones arena, and I know that that doesn't translate 100%, but typically those players that have the mechanics to shine in ones, they eventually figure out how to use their ability in 3v3s as well. So I would not be surprised if it's just a little bit of a buffer period where they're building that team chemistry, raise bull, CRR, kind of have this system that they've probably been used to, and now they're going to have to make some adjustments. Obviously, as Diaz is a quite capable individual, so maybe it's just something like they got to make some more space for each player. But either way, I still have full faith that Complexity Squad is going to be very competitive. I don't think Furia is going to lock things up 3 for 3. And it doesn't stop there. I mean, you have Ninjas in Pajamas, who I think throughout Split 1 were definitely improving and continuing to threaten those top two teams a little bit more and more as the split went on. And they had a strong showing there in that tournament as well. They qualified through uppers. Do we think that there is a possibility that they could maybe catch Complexity lacking?
For sure. 100%. I think there's so many teams that have the talent, especially it's one of those things where it's like, do they have like land experience? Like
Sure.
it when Fury and Complexity moved back to Sam, my immediate reaction was they're gonna feel this like kind of big brother relationship with the other teams in the region, where when it really comes down to game day, they feel as though they're gonna beat the opponent, and the opponent probably feels as though they're a lesser competition than Complexity or Furia. But now that's kind of all out the door. We have a lot of teams with talent who can be here. Furia feel like a lock. You can put them in Sharpie for me, especially after a pretty lukewarm Major One, and they were really online. I think Yan had the highest number of ranked games in the season leading up to that, which
Oh wow.
was you knew that they were ready for it. And them having the finish they had, I think that they're going to come back in full force. But who knows? Diaz and Dorito, what they're expecting from those players, at least on paper, seems like it's very different. Diaz is more mechanical and create himself. When in the past they were kind of not relying on Dorito for the same kind of thing consistently. I think that this is an upgrade for complexity long term, but different play styles. It might take a little bit to gel, and this might just be one of those things where it comes down to playoff matchups. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I do want to hit on one thing because you guys mentioned the injury, and then we'll jump to the MENA regional preview and talk about the MENA region as well. But Monkey Moon also has sustained an injury. He had a car accident, and I think something to do with the wrist. He was wearing a brace or a cast of some sort as well. But and while obviously I don't understand French, he was live streaming. He was playing the game, so it doesn't seem as though it's such a severe injury that he can't hold a controller and can't play the game. And from what I'm reading on Reddit surrounding that stream, they translated some moments. It sounds as though Monkey Moon feels confident in his gameplay. Doesn't feel the need for a sub, and it sounds as though he's going to continue to compete for BDS. So,
Yeah, it's
I'll say,
crazy. Uh,
obviously, we hope for the best for the players. We don't want anyone to face an injury, whether it's traditional sports, esports, whatever. I think that the best world for all of us as fans is when everybody can play. We
Mhm.
don't want situations where one of your top teams loses a top talent. That is just bad for everyone. So hopeful that that doesn't impact Monkey Moon too much, and BDS can continue to roll on just like they did in Split One.
Yeah, but it's crazy to think about how quickly things can change,
Sure.
right? One
Yep.
moment you're just a lock for every top qualifying spot you want to get, and an injury here or there can really throw things
Hmm.
completely in a different direction. Um, but yeah, it looks like he's doing well. Uh, yeah, I don't see them dropping down too much. It's still Monkey Moon, you know.
That's right.
Even
That's right.
even on game sense, he can win against some
I
teams
know.
in the qualifiers.
Yep.
Extra saw the tweet. He was like, "Now's my time." He's like, "No, actually, I'm okay. I'm good."
I
He's
mean,
like,
I
"Ah."
did look up the rulebook again to just see what it says on substitutions because imagine it's not actually going that well during a tournament and he's like, nah, I actually can't finish this series or something,
True.
right? What happens? It actually doesn't say too much about it. It has a whole paragraph about disconnects and everything. That's pretty set in stone. If there's a disconnect, there's very strict rules on how to get your substitutes in and when you can do that and whatever. Um, when it comes to health issues, it's actually you have to scroll all the way down to chapter 14 or something, and then you see that when it comes to health issues, it's mostly up to the discretion of the admins, which makes a lot of sense because every
Sure.
situation
That's right.
regarding the health of the players or even the coaches or managers is going to be completely different. So you want to have some kind of freedom in your rulebook to say,
Yeah.
well, this is asking for this situation, or we actually now we can put in a substitution, or maybe this isn't really the most fair situation, something like that. So I think most of those rules kind of were written in a way that they mostly apply to LAN events because then, the health can be much more of an issue and it can be
Sure.
much closely inspected by the actual tournament admins, which isn't really the case if everyone's playing online. But it seems like if something were to happen with Monkey Moon or with Realis or with anyone and they needed to make some changes, there is room for it in the
Yeah.
rulebook.
Yeah.
I
So
just
just wanted
imagine Jens by candlelight with a glass of wine, like chapter 14 of the rule book.
No, no, no.
Yes, here's the section I was looking for.
Yeah, that sounds good. But no, it was a PDF file which I could Control F on substitute.
there you go. That's funny.
Find it
Well, I
right
just
away.
I wanted to mention that because obviously Monkey Moon is a beloved player and a very successful player and a big piece of BDS's success. So just something to keep your eyes on. Well, let's jump over to MENA Regional Preview. We've got Rule 1 breezing through the quals, while Twisted Minds go to 5 in their qualifying match. Um, there's all kinds of different perspectives, different opinions, varying tweets and claims, etc., surrounding the decision to drop Ahmad rather than Khaled. I think that is the big thing that everybody was debating about or curious about. Um, no one really confused, in my opinion, that Venom was the selection. I think there's a couple, maybe 3 or so players that um, probably would not have caused any ruckus from the community, but they went with Venom. But I think the thing that again everybody was confused about was the decision to release Ahmad and Jens. You've talked about this. There was some maybe some discourse or a little bit of frustration internally, even while at the major, and so it seemed like there was something that was going to change. And do we think that this is the right move? I mean, here it's just a qualifier, but a clean performance from Rule 1 as they make their way into event number 1 for Split 2.
Yeah, I mean, they still have the pedigree standards that they need to be at the top of the region. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. You have maybe Bravado or Twisted Minds that can do something about it. But we'll have to see where they end up on the bracket side. This is
Yeah.
really, really one of those cases where it comes down to where they meet. Is going to be a quarterfinal. It's going to be a semifinal. Rather not be grand finals because they will, if they make it there, it's going to be Team Falcons facing them if
Right.
everything works out. But yeah, it comes down to the other teams. I think to Twisted Minds, to Bravado Game. That's where I'm looking at to see how well Rule 1 are going to do this split.
Well, we've also got Team ROC as well, the young
Yeah.
ones, Nush, Ops, and Dr. Known. And obviously, you mentioned a couple other solid squads there for MENA, but I think those guys, maybe we can start to throw them into that mix as well, as far as being maybe not contenders for major, but one of those upset caliber teams, right? Where they can maybe punch up and maybe give Rule 1 a loss or maybe give Twisted Minds a loss that they weren't expecting. Um, Belleair, what do you think about this Team ROC? Qualify for their second straight regional. Obviously, a little bit of a slow start, but loads of talent on that team, and a young talent as well.
Yeah, seeing that momentum is big. And I think for a young squad like this with so few spots, are you really trying to contend for a major? Of course, that's the objective. I
Sure,
think
sure.
no matter what, as you ramp up, I think confidence is key. Like you said, if you can take a series or a couple of games off one of the big boys in Falcons or Roll One, that's huge. And also, there's those teams that are just on that tier right below them that I think we could definitely see. Maybe not them consistently beat, but over time take a series off of, and something sneaky with that Venom move that I was just thinking about. As I said, Bravado is Roll One removed talent from Bravado, who was
Yeah.
right on their heels. They kind of took the talent out of the team who was right behind them. a sneaky good pickup for them. Kind of
It's
reduce the
and it's
talent
also
there.
it's not something that typically the community thinks about when you're making roster moves. Like you only think about like where is that player landing, but that's a good point to bring up because in a region that has just 2, 3, maybe 4 teams that are sincerely contending for those top 2 major spots, that actually does go come into play as well. So, making your one of your opposition squads a little bit weaker while also, increasing the ceiling and maybe even the floor for your team can be a huge difference there. So we'll see what happens over there in MENA. Obviously, all these events are going to be unfolding this upcoming weekend, the final weekend of April. I'm excited to see that. Well, let's jump over. We've got SSA regional preview as well, our final region here that will be competing this weekend and just went through their qualifier. And I'm going to say this wrong, but here's the name: Teshao. Is that
Sounds good to
close?
me.
Yeah, I would go for Tesho, but
Tesho?
yeah, I don't know. I don't.
But we've got the youngest ever player qualifying for RLCS. We know that this offseason they dropped the age requirement from 15 to 13, and we had a 14-year-old in Scribbles. We had a couple other 14-year-olds, I think Nush and maybe Ops or Dr. None. I'm not sure which of the 2 were the younger, but a few players around the 14-year-old mark making events. Maybe Sphinx as well. I don't know exactly how young he is, but we've got the youngest
Mm,
now,
I think he's
13
15 or
years old.
16. Yes.
13. That is this man. They're 13. That is so young and is making the RLCS event. I think that is one exciting for SSA, right? Like we want to see that region continue to develop. We want to see new talent blossom, young talent blossom, and this is an example of that right there.
Yeah, I mean it's awesome to see. And when Shift put out a tweet to you know to let everyone know about this spectacular young player coming in, he responded saying, "I am truly honored. I dreamed that people were talking about me internationally, and this dream
Oh,
is finally come true. Thank you
wow.
very much." So
What
he's
a
he's
legend.
ready to grind. Everyone is so supportive of his journey. I mean, it's great to see.
Mhm.
Obviously, when you're 13 years old, you don't really know what the future holds for you. I mean, not at any age, but especially not at 13. So where he's going to go within Rocket League, within his school life. I mean, imagine in a month he fails an exam and his parents are like, "Nah, actually, you should focus more on your schoolwork." Literally anything is possible at this
Sure.
point. So I'm just happy that he gets the recognition for being the 13-year-old to
Mhm.
make it to an event like this. And I mean, it's good to see for the region because
Yeah.
if there's anything that Sub-Saharan Africa needs, it's own talent,
Yeah.
homegrown
Yeah.
talent, and that's Tesha. So awesome.
Well, Belair, do you think that a player like that show can make the same kind of impact that a player like Sphinx did over in APAC in Split One? Obviously, I think at this point most people look at Sphinx as the number one player in that region, or at least um, that's from that region, right? We've got some imports, especially recently with Tho moving over, and he's obviously a very talented player. But do you think someone like this show can make that big of an impact immediately in SSA?
I mean, anything's possible, especially at that age. And admittedly, it's probably one of the regions I know the least about.
Sure.
I think one of the big benefits of a Teshao-esque story is that when we're just inundated with so much Rocket League and there's so much that you can watch and try and get deeper knowledge on, I don't always a lot of time or energy to SSA and kind of
Sure.
seeing, but like a story like Teshao, I'm definitely going to be
Yeah. Yeah.
tuning in and seeing how he's playing. So as they continue to progress and we get the imports, like we just had ZPS come over, who's joined a line of players who go to some of those emerging regions. I
Well, that's
definitely think
for
that
APAC, right? We've had
sure.
CPS and THO for APAC, but for SSA, actually, we have PK Salen from
Yep.
Oh yeah.
As we
from
kind of
European
get
soil.
these, as you enter a different stage of your career and kind of move over to these um, emerging regions, is that the term that we've all landed on?
I
That's the
like that.
nicest. Minor region seems a little, but it's similar to what we see in professional sports leagues, right? Like I
Yeah.
follow the NBA closely. Commonly, what we see is as you enter the twilight of your career, we see a lot of players go over to play in Europe or play basketball in China. It's different but similar to what Messi did to kind of bring more attention
Sure.
and eyeballs to the MLS. So I think the movement of talent like that is great. But to go alongside that, somebody like Teshao, I think is a cool story to follow as we
Yeah.
continue to see the region grow.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love your point too, where it's just another fun story for a lesser served region, one that has never had an official broadcast in any sense. And so, you know, it's just, I think, a, a little more difficult for the general community that may typically tune into NA and EU to find talent, find stories, keep up with what's going on in SSA, just because they, like I said, they have not always received that support that some of the other regions have. So things like that, fun story, brand new player, shift
Yeah.
highlighting it, those kinds of things bring some attention to it, which is exciting and obviously a
Yeah,
positive
if
for
you're
the
not
region.
having the organizations in there that you want to support, then you're looking for other narratives, for other storylines, and the only one that really has been dominating SSA is their own players against the
Sure.
incoming players from Europe, which hasn't always been the nicest narrative. You know,
Yeah.
it has this little little irk about it. That's like, it's not always been great in the
Sure.
past split. So it's really good to have this other story of young players from South Africa, Guns, and from Réunion, Tesha. So yeah, awesome.
Exciting
When
stuff. Well,
I
that's gonna go ahead.
I was just gonna say, when I think back on majors past, like some of the storylines that I've been most interested in, a lot of them are maybe it's just the underdog appreciation in me, but Commutator, Realize, even
Yeah, yeah.
Sphinx
Oh
are the most
yes.
recent. Those are the ones that really get me excited. So, this is just another feather in that cap.
That's right. So that's gonna wrap up the regional previews. As I said, obviously we got 4 regions: SSA, MENA, SAM, and North America that'll be competing this following weekend. As I mentioned, the last weekend in April.
Can I give
Um,
one more shout out to
absolutely.
my boy Justice actually making the regional in North
Yeah.
America?
Yeah.
That's
Another
some
EU
Dutch
import.
representation where I did not expect it.
He's playing CRL over here. Isn't that why he's over in
Yeah.
NA?
Well,
Yeah.
Hmm.
he's here for or there for CRL and for the RLCS, and now he's actually done something with that, which is yeah, just awesome. I mean, he is
Yeah.
a good player.
Yep.
I just didn't expect to see a Dutch player on the field. I mean, we have Violent Panda coaching, right?
Mhm.
Actually, a lot of European coaching talent
Yeah.
in the regional. You have um, Adam Baguette, you have Noah, you have Violent Panda, and you also TSM just picked up Eclipse. So there's a lot of European coaches.
Yeah. Absolutely. Alongside the growing number of European players as well competing in North America. But hey, we'll take it any way we can get competitive. That's what we need. So
Right.
that, as I said, that's going to wrap up the regional preview. Y'all check that out this weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun. Next up, we've got our recurring segment by the dip, and just an explanation for you. This is a segment where we talk about who we think are some of the best value players for fantasy. You may be thinking, fantasy? Rocket League has fantasy? What? Yes, you can check it out on fanrl.com. Just a fantasy website, totally free. Just an exciting thing. You're automatically placed in the global league. If you go to the join league section, you can find all kinds of stuff in there. Different creators and organizations hosting their own fantasy leagues. So get in there, get your team. It's just another fun way to consume RL Esports. So check that out. We're going to give you some selections that we have made that we predict to be a good value player. Do we have anyone that wants to go first? Let me go. I'll kick it off.
Go for it. Yeah.
I have talked about this in the past, typically as an example of a player that I think is always a good choice. Um, Aqua. Aqua has now joined NRG alongside Mist and Garrett G, and he is priced at 1450. And I'm going to tell y'all, uh, let's see, was it? I think it's last season. They start to blur together. I can't remember. I think it's last season. Um, Aqua and Stizzy absolutely carried my fantasy team week in and week out. And here's why. They were on teams that just unfortunately weren't going to make top 8, but that bodes well for fantasy because they get eliminated early, which means their score will not deteriorate as the event goes on and the competition gets stiffer. So when you have a player like Aqua who's going to take on a lot of the playmaking ability, the generative side of offense and the scoring as well. He's going to do a lot of that. He's going to put up some good numbers at 1450. That is an incredibly great value as well. That's kind of on the low end, so you'll still be able to put some of those more consistent, confident players in your lineup as well. I'm going with Aqua. I think that is a home run pick at 1450.
I do not care about your early out strategy. I know it works, but that's no fun. I want to actually have a fantasy team that I can support throughout the tournament. So my pick is apparently Jack, because
Mm,
they should be making it pretty far, and I know that first killer is going to take a lot of points away from him, if you will. But at 1400, apparently Jack, I think, still is a really nice pick.
yeah,
He can still ball out and put up a good performance. And for 1400, you're not expecting someone to
that's
put
right.
up 700 points in your fantasy, so you might as well try your hand on apparently Jack.
Well, and here's the thing too. I mean, even this season with his current roster, he's had a couple of pretty great performances regarding fantasy stats. So I think you're totally right. At 1400, there's really no downside for it. Belair, what you
Yes,
got
but
for us? Who do you think's a good value pick for FanRL.com?
I'm following a similar sentiment to Jens here. You
Okay,
guys
let's
heard it
go.
here first. Who do you think's NRG is getting eliminated 03? That's why he picked up Aqua. But apparently Jack and that team have a lot to prove as they get started here. They
Yeah,
had a pretty good major and they're building up. So I think that's a team who is looking to improve their results. And I think Jack is still the leader there. But I'm going to go with Nolly, another player who is looking to, I guess, rebound is the best term to use. Not a major that he's going to be telling his grandkids about. I think it was pretty underwhelming from Nolly and OG at that event. And he's somebody who consistently has shown the ability to bounce back and have big events, and somebody you can't count out. So I see a world where Nolly could have a pretty impactful event here to get things kicked off. And at 1400, you really can't go wrong.
yeah, yeah. That's definitely the key with all of ours. Is you keep that value cheap. Keep that investment cheap, I guess, and you've got a lot of upside there. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to throw a couple more out there just because I see them and I think that they are worthwhile to note. I think Nas and AJ both at 1450 are fair kind of gamble picks. Very similar to what Yen said earlier. Like even if they only put up a 450, a 480, well, you didn't pay a whole lot for it anyways. But I think there's always a potential for AJ to pop off and really have a great event. And I will say personally, I kind of expect M80 to regain a bit. Obviously,
Mhm.
they've shown throughout Swiss stage of the first three events that they've been great, but they haven't put it together in the playoff bracket. So I think that team, I believe in them to kind of regain. So I think those are some worthwhile shouts as well. Um, Tell us who you guys think. Do you have fantasy? Who is your favorite player to pick on there? Who's the most consistent scorer for you? And who is your best value pick? Drop those down in the comments below. That's going to conclude the buy the dip segment. We got one more piece of information to look at here before we close out the show. RLCS payouts and DDoSing issues and cheating as well. We've seen a lot of discussion about the invisible player hacks, etc., win trading, whatever. But something happened that doesn't happen often in the Rocket League space. The Rocket League status account and the Rocket League Esports account have both tweeted acknowledging the issues and saying that they are working on solutions. Um, and I see I'm curious to get you guys' take because I see both sides and I see why both sides feel the way they do. There are some people and they're all commenting WComs, thank you for the communication, appreciate you acknowledging it, yada yada. But then there's also like a counter movement where they're like, this is just a statement. They're not fixing it. I want to see action. I don't want to see them yapping. I kind of see both sides as an individual that has been around for a while and misses and we haven't always had great communication, but I feel like it's gotten worse in the past 2 to 3 years. Um, there was a time where we had a roadmap, for the game and updates and what's coming. And so, we used to get like regular Reddit posts and updates from the development team. So I think some communication, some acknowledgement is better than nothing. Is it a huge reason to celebrate? Maybe not, but I'm excited to see them at least acknowledge these things because one of the things that I imagine it's got to be frustrating from a player. You're getting these cheaters, hackers, DDoS, whatever, even server issues, right? And you continue to complain, make the tweets, etc., and then it's just radio silence. I have to imagine that's extremely frustrating. So to at least have the
Yeah.
acknowledgement, they hear me. maybe they're not going to fix it as quickly as they like, but I know that they hear me and they have said that publicly. That's got to bring at least a little peace of mind.
Yeah, well, it's. I feel like Average Sachs in his tweets, which is different than the copy pasted tweets from most people. He said in his last paragraph, just knowing that you guys are investigating, I think, the DDoSing of the servers, cheating slash boosting, the very
Yeah.
poor conditions of the servers, and the situation about the cash prize for the players would be a first step in the right direction. And
Right.
that first step in the right direction is exactly what we got. So yes, it's not, the whole problem isn't solved, but it is something that people were asking for, people were actually looking for, and just to get that, I mean, yes, it's the first step and it is a positive. You can't say it's not fixed yet, but you can't see that as a negative, you know?
Right. Right.
It's I feel like the relationship, you alluded to it, Hootie. It's been so challenging for so long. I mean,
Yeah.
the off season is probably the most glaring version of that, but it's kind of this uh, uh, darned if you do, darned if you don't. If
Sure.
you're on the Blast Epic side of things, where in the past we had the roadmap, and then if you don't meet those deadlines, then you have everybody, you know, thinking that the fires are being fanned, and then if you don't reach out at all, anytime you do communicate, people immediately greet you with, you know, oh, here you finally are. So they're in a tough position, and
Yeah.
it's kind of a calloused relationship. But it is good to, like Yen said, take those first steps towards fixing it, because it's a little defeating. For if I was on the outside looking in, if you're just in the wider esports community and you don't follow the RLCS, it seems like the trend recently has been the only time you hear about the community is when it's negative things about
Yeah. Yeah.
not non-payment, or you know, uh, putting resources where they could be better served elsewhere. So I guess all this to say, like, it stinks that this is the situation, but I think the communication is definitely needed.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that if you look back even from 2015 forward, one of the most consistent and constant complaints from the community is just that communication. We don't know what they're doing. We don't know what their plan is. We don't know what they're working on. Blah blah blah. And I think since obviously there was a period in this extended offseason where we didn't get information, and it sucks, but from the business side, like they may not have had it worked out yet. So they just don't have anything to share because it's not solidified. And it
Hmm.
seems like that is kind of what was going on. But since
It's a,
things have been solidified, I'm not saying that everything has been perfect, but it does feel like they are communicating more. I know
yeah,
one of the big ones was when Torsos and Power made that big claim or complaint on Twitter about the difference in travel accommodations from seasons past, where OCE obviously has a long way to travel, a few days to acclimate to the time change, et cetera, and as well as just the travel in general to kind of to get over jet lag, et cetera, to prepare to be the best that they can. They need some time, right? And this new change was giving them 1 day to make that adjustment and get used to their new environment. But we saw a fairly swift response. I think it was 2 or 3 days within the tweet being published. They responded and said, "We're working on it," and then they made the change. They made the adjustment. They accommodated the players' wishes, and now we're seeing some consistency with that. I mean, even after the major, they sent out a tweet fielding feedback about the
yeah.
major and the production, and so there is a trend going on that, and it's not a lot. Okay, so I'm not saying that this is everything to celebrate for, but there's a trend where it seems as though communication is improving. They're addressing things publicly, which I think is a really, really big deal. Not just hearing it, silence, and then you fix it, but saying out loud, like Eversax mentioned, I hear you, I see the problem, and I'm working to fix it. I think that is like you said, it's just a huge step in the right direction.
And again, from Eversax, he concluded as in a reply to the Rock League tweet, thank you. Now we know what to do when something is wrong. You can count on us to do it every time.
That's right.
Because that's, I think you brought up the Torso situation, which was very apt because it's a very similar situation to
Yep.
that, where it's not the general community sentiment that made Cellnix or Epic Games respond. It's actually just very clear messaging, and within 24 hours they put out these tweets to, you know, maybe calm everyone down a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
or actually come with solutions. In any case, they came with a response, and that was what some people were looking for. So
Yeah.
now I guess Eversex is right. When you want something done, you have to very
Yeah.
publicly complain about it. And it was the big names as well. It was the high
Mm-hmm.
profile players. It was Zen, Patera, Atao. Everyone was tweeting about it. And I think mainly for uh, the Rocket League status account about the server connectivity issues. I think that's something people really didn't know if they were looking into it at
Yeah.
all. There was just radio silence. So then they were tweeting that they are looking into game server performance, but also how Rocket League's game traffic is being routed by ISPs, especially in Europe, particularly in Europe, right?
Yep.
Because that's where most of the complaints were coming from. That's really good to see. The other issue, on the other hand, about the payment issues is an issue that has been going on for literal years.
Yeah.
Because there are some payouts from tournaments that happened 2-3 years ago that still have to come through. And of course, every personal situation with taxes, with locations, with age restrictions on bank accounts, everything that comes with it is very different and very difficult sometimes to fix. But it seems like there the the response from Rocket League Esports account on Twitter had a little bit more of a mixed reaction, I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and frankly, it makes sense because it's not just about gameplay. That's money, right? And so
Yeah,
the people
and it's been an
you
issue that's been going on
right.
for a while the players were getting some feedback from Epic and it wasn't getting resolved. And
Yeah.
just a couple of weeks ago, Jerome Coupe from the Prodigy Player Agency actually uh, kind of brought everything together
Yeah.
and collected information from all the players, or at least a bunch of players who still had some outstanding winnings,
Yeah.
outstanding earnings from Epic Games, and tried to resolve it directly because he has I guess, a
Yeah.
better line of communication than some of the players and their parents. And even then, he put out on Twitter in French, but I loosely translate that they were being sent in circles. And 2 weeks ago, they were told, well, it's going to happen after the weekend or
Mm,
in a week. And then things weren't resolved. At least that's
yeah.
what I'm reading from out of his tweet. So that's where maybe a statement like this doesn't do as much because
Right.
people have seen it go in different directions when
Mm,
they actually say, well, we'll get it done and it doesn't get resolved.
yeah.
So we'll
And
see. Yeah.
you see parents chiming in,
Yeah.
echoing a similar sentiment where they're kind of getting the runaround. And I want to mention that it's not strictly RLCS. This is present for CRL players as well. And so it is definitely something with kind of the Epic payout system.
As
Jens
well as
mentioned,
Fortnite.
yeah, yeah. He
It's not
mentioned
just
some of
Rocket League either.
the challenges that they have with an international player base, right? There are different rules and regulations and restrictions depending on age and location, et cetera. So, I'm sure it's a complex problem, but it is one that is important. I mean, of the utmost importance, I would say, because if you're going to be hosting these events and running a premier professional circuit where you have basically, I mean, everyone signing up is under the assumption that we all agree to make good on what it is that we're promising. The players have to make good on their behavior and, professionalism, et cetera, or they will be in trouble. And now I think the same should be true for Psionics and the company hosting these events. They have said that they are going to pay out in X number of days. I think typically it's net 90, and they need to make good on those things.
Yeah. Whereas for Vatira, we're talking about $130,000 or
Whew,
120,000 euros
whew,
um,
whew.
from as far back as 2021.
Jeez, man.
So
Yeah, that's.
then
I mean, it's unacceptable.
it's such a big issue that actually Le Monde, one of the bigger newspapers in France,
Yeah,
published an article about this, which I got this information from because they interviewed Fatira's mom.
yeah,
So yeah, it's quite a big deal.
absolutely.
Yeah, they
Well,
haven't paid me any of my earnings either. I'm very upset.
hey, same, same. I'm waiting
Hoodie
on my
actually has some
Ridiculous.
earnings.
my qual
Yeah.
two, $100 from top 128. I'm waiting on it. But hopefully, man,
Can you
hopefully because
explain a little bit, Hoodie, about how that works? Like, what do you do
yeah,
when you earn some money?
yeah, there is a you sign into your Epic page. There's like an Epic account center, and you have like a dashboard where you can handle different stuff. Um, and it's just like it's just a prize claim. It's a very simple page, and it's actually I've done it for Twitch Rivals as well. A lot of the things that Rocket League does with um, collaborators, I guess, will work through that Epic payout system. So it's just a thing, and it's very straightforward, very simple. You sign in, you go to your page, it's already populated there, and it just says claim. You just click your button,
Oh,
boom, and it
right.
all happens. Yeah, and so when you set up that account initially, you link whatever it is, your PayPal, your bank, whatever requirement they have. I don't remember what it was, but and then the money is all just electronically transferred immediately. So now that's
Yeah.
my experience as an individual in North America that's of age and doesn't need a guardian to. Yeah, I don't know what all they face when they're
Or
13,
any
14,
other
15.
tax
So
forms, because
Yep.
apparently I think it was Joyo's mom who said something about a tax form that hadn't
yep.
come through that Epic Games should have
Well,
filled in, which actually makes it difficult for Joyo to actually do his taxes.
yeah, absolutely. So I mean, it's definitely, like I said, it's a problem of the utmost importance that they definitely need to resolve. But we mentioned it. Step one has occurred. Hopefully, they will continue to follow up with step 2, 3, and 4 and get everything resolved. Because, yeah, I mean, they need to make good on their promises, just like they hold the players to that standard as well. So, well, folks, I think that's going to do it for the show today. Belleair, what did you think about your first shift cast?
It was incredible. I was glad to be here and talk through everything and guys, just really appreciative of you reaching out and having me on.
Sure.
It's exciting times. We got Split 2 that is starting to get rolling here. So
Absolutely. Well, here's
we're
the
gonna
thing.
see who we
Okay,
got.
what Jens and I and Michael are starting to learn is they love when we're wrong. They just love it. They don't want us to be right. They just love laughing at us. So we're not going
Yeah.
to let you get out of here without a hot take. Belleair, throw us your 4 teams from NA that make Major 2.
Well, while I pull it up, I got to tell you, I've already burned myself really bad by. I tweeted a couple of weeks ago the fact that Dignitas, all
I
three of their
saw.
players were at like 1,000 games. I was like, gotta watch out for that. And are already in the gutter
Oh
there.
no.
Yeah,
I'm
it's like,
sure they'll love
hey,
that. I'm sure they'll love
they
that. Well,
might
give us another
they
one.
might be coming up. Well, I think let me take the boring route and just lock
Sure.
G2 Genji.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't see
You
that
got
not
to.
occurring. Maybe for the fodder of the exercise, I was on the fence about having the hot take in Major 1 that
Mhm.
SSG were going to be the 1 seed from North America. I
Ooh.
struck out on that one.
Yep.
So I'll lock in SSG. I
Okay.
really like that squad, and I'm expecting big things from LJ and as they kind
Yeah.
of get Chicago integrated. And where are we going to go for the last one? Let's go. Let's follow the hot hand here. Let's go
This is
ahead
where it
and
can get hot.
man, I think if I was
Stop.
actually putting money on it, I would say M80, but I'm gonna follow the
Ooh.
hot hand and say NRG. It's time.
Ooh.
It's
NRG
time.
at the Major.
Yeah.
Garrett G back in business.
Oh, I love that. I
We
love
saw the
that.
passion. This is
Oh,
Aqua, the
yeah.
best squad that
Did you
he's been on.
did you
So
see
I'm
that
following
tweet
it.
where it was
Yeah.
hit like just the video of his door while he was playing?
Oh yeah. Yeah. His
Did you see it,
parents
Belleair?
filmed.
That's me anytime I get an Amazon package at my house. Yeah.
Yeah!
Let's go.
That's
Oh,
too
that's
funny.
great. I mean,
Man, I love that.
it was actually so weird when these teams were playing each other, right? You had Dignitas,
Yeah.
you had NRG. That was the matchup that eventually happened. But I mean, Dignitas actually lost, which brought an end to how long of a streak for Arsenal making regionals? Oh, I should
Was
know
it not?
this. Shift
It's like
tweeted
the
about it.
entire
I
open
saw the
era, was it
tweet.
not?
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you actually look at Garrett G, if he wouldn't have made it, it would have been an even longer streak. It would go
Yeah.
back all the way to like 2018 or something.
Sheesh.
Man.
Unbelievable. But Captain America, he clutched up.
He absolutely did.
All right, we got our hot take there from Belleair. Y'all be sure to hold him accountable. Y'all tweet him, comment. Get,
And follow him on the socials.
Yeah,
His
follow him
YouTube
as well.
stuff is good. He's getting into the conversations on Twitter.
Oh, yeah,
Thank you very
Love to
much.
see
I
it.
appreciate it.
of course. Well, that's going to conclude the episode of episode 13 of ShiftCast. Thank you all for watching. Y'all be sure to subscribe to the channel. Check out the clips. Follow on Spotify if you want to listen there on the go. But we appreciate you all watching, and we'll catch you next time.